Three snaps and a clap. Welcome to Voices of Victory podcast show. I'm Mario De Leone. And today we're going to do this wonderful reaction video for Dr. Rangan Chatterjee and Jay Shetty. I want to say up front that everything will be in a 100% positive frame of reference. In other words, it's going to be positive intent towards both of these gentlemen. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee is a respected physician, a well-known expert for making holistic health simple and, of course, accessible. And Jay Shetty is a best-selling author and former monk who inspires millions with his teachings on purpose, relationships, and, of course, mindful living. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm more of a warrior monk mentality. It's a little bit of a different mentality, but I want to bring to the table both of these gentlemen. As a guy who studies the Vedas, I enjoy their point of view. I enjoy where they're coming from. Now, we're going to first move on to the very first part of their video. And their video is literally it's a couple hours long at best. So I'm going to be speaking on different time codes, and I'm just going to go ahead and cue that up. So the very first part of their interview, they talk about mind training, how important it is to train the human mind. And you know, I'm always talking about that on this show all the time. Mind training is something that is literally missing in school. They don't necessarily tell you how to think. So the theme here is Jay Shetty's going to speak on the idea of, hey, listen, we had gym, we had PE, physical education, but we never had a mind class. And what I'm going to do is simply just expand on that when the time comes. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
And I wonder if you could expand as to why you think all of us have the ability to train our minds.
Rangan, I think you're right. I think you are spot on when you say that you don't believe that we all know the fact that we can train our mind. And one of the reasons for that is growing up in England. Obviously, I was born and raised in London. We had PE. Everyone went to physical education class. We were encouraged to play sports, but there was no class for the mind. You never went to mind class. You never went to mind school. And even when we grew up, there was no class for the mind. Even when we learned about biology, it was very much about cells and plants. And I feel as humans, we've developed such a fascination for the outer world, but we haven't developed so much of a focus on our inner space. And
I just want to stop right there and go ahead and expand on what Jay is actually saying. The first thing I want to bring to the table to expand on is, yes, Jay is correct. And just imagine what would shift if we treated our attention span like a muscle, not a gift. Okay, you don't just go to the gym once and call it done. You're not finished there. Mental clarity works the same way. We live in a world where attention span is now the next commodity. And all of the folks out there know this. All the advertisers, they know this. This is, public information. So you don't go to the gym once and call it, one and done. Like, this is it. This is something you have to cultivate. You have to be able to cultivate a strong attention span. And there are ways to do that through breath work, through meditation, because there are people out there attempting to put out information to hijack your brain, hijack your mind. So I want to just share that Jay is 100% right here. All right. And the next portion of what we're going to go over is stepping into the power of curiosity. Jay is going to bring up a really strong key point. He's going to talk about curiosity, and I'm going to go ahead and actually expand on that. I'm going to take what he said and we're going to move it to the next level. Just going to do it Mario flavor. So here we go.
That's the goal, is you may not need a monk in your life, but who or what or which idea is it in your life that you haven't yet let in?
Yeah. And I think what you speak to there is the importance of staying curious and keeping somewhat of an open mind. And I think that is something that we see across society now, that I think is becoming incredibly problematic, where people are stuck in their little silos and, you know, they don't look beyond that. They're very quick to judge other people who have a different view. They're very quick to sort of shut people down unless it fits with their narrative. And I think really what I'm hearing from you is staying curious, staying open-minded, listening to other people's ideas. And it's like you said at the start, right? You're not trying to persuade anyone to do anything, but if you're a bit curious, maybe there's an idea that someone's going to hear throughout this conversation that just sparks something for them. But very much like, I guess, you had when you were 18. Jay, I think one of the first times I came across you was a few years back. I heard you on an interview. So I can't remember what the interview was. I remember being really impacted by what you said and thinking, who is this guy? I mean, this is pretty incredible what I heard. And it wasn't one of your videos. You were talking a lot about, I think, identity. And I think it was something about, it really got me thinking about, what is my identity? I guess I was on a journey then anyway, since I lost my father about, 7 years ago now. I think that was one of the significant moments in my life that got me to start questioning everything, thinking about, well, who am I? You know, am I living my life or am I living somebody else's life?
All right, we're going to stop it right here. So you could see that in this aspect of it, Dr. Rangan speaks on staying curious. Now, I'm just going to take a moment to expand on it, to expand into his words and expand into Jay's words. Here's why. Here is why. This is like saying yes, and staying curious leads to more objectivity. Let me say that again. Staying curious leads to more objectivity. It invites the big picture thinking rather than thinking small and playing life small. Because at the end of the day, thinking big is great. It's powerful to have vision. It's okay to be lofty. But the biggest problem of being lofty is having that power to bring that loftiness right back down to the ground, bringing it down to the earth, and being practical about the steps to achieve the end result. That's what it's all about. So staying curious is a superpower. It leads to objectivity. It invites big picture thinking. It allows you to see other people's points of view. And what's happening with social media and these echo chambers is they're creating a very narrow frame in which they see the world. They only see one side and another, nothing beyond that. There's nothing beyond their frame of reference, because they're only filling their reality with that same information. It's kind of like a horse with the blinders. The only difference is you get to choose the feed that goes in the feed bag, right? You know, we click on information, we like stuff. The algorithm creates a social media diet that gets adjusted and refed back to you. So what happens with that is you're feeding yourself the same points of information. It only goes this far and this far. It's got a small, narrow range of data, a small, narrow range of information. Now, we're going to go ahead and listen to the aspect on identity, because I'm also going to speak on that.
I think you expressed it so beautifully. But then when I read your book, I think you start off very early on with identity. So I wonder if you could expand on identity. What is it, and why do you think many of us need to spend a bit of time thinking about that?
Yeah, so I think I know exactly which interview you're talking about and what I say in it. The monks start with identity and at the root of the issue, because a lot of what we experience in the world today, as you know, and I know how holistic you are in the way you advise your patients. When you were speaking on my podcast, I was so impressed by you and how you're able to tie in so many psychological and natural practices and relational exercises that can improve people's health and well-being overall. I remember you talking about encouraging your clients to see more friends as a way of changing the way they feel. And I was thinking, wow, this person's got so many great ideas. And the reason is because, Rangan, you also have that monk mindset of you go to the root of the issue. It's really easy to just say, oh, well, just take 2 of these a day, or try this, or, maybe you need to do this. But when you think about it from the root perspective, where do our challenges arise? And our challenges arise by how we see ourselves. And what I believe Rangan's referring to is there's this quote that I begin my book with and that I've shared in interviews for the last few years. And it's from a writer named Charles Horton Cooley, who wrote this in the 1900s. And what he said is that, I think it's in the 1800s, at the end of the 1800s, towards the 1900s. And he said, and bear with me, and you've got to really listen closely to this. So what he said that the challenge today is, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. Now, just let that blow your mind for a moment. I will explain it, I promise.
I'm going to break this down a little bit. All right. This is really, I'm going to expand on that. I'm really going to expand, and I'm going to let him expand on that as well. I'm going to expand on that for a moment. I'm not what I think I am. I'm what I think you think I am. All right, that's where I want to expand on that. So here's the big plot twist with that, is most people never meet themselves and get to know themselves internally. All right. They never meet themselves because they're too busy being mirrors for everybody else. But the real power starts when you define yourself without waiting for permission from the outside world. That's what that's about. The identity can indeed be very fragile. That's why some people can just have a total paradigm shift and blow their whole world apart. The identity is very fragile. There are societal reinforcement systems that are designed to keep us locked into the narratives, designed to keep us locked into our stories. There's echo chambers out there. The echo chambers are literally there to reinforce the identities that we have. All we hear is these little echo chambers on social media, a bunch of people talking about the same thing, echoing the same thing. And the more they create that echo, the more they create this bandwagon mentality. It's like for every belief that exists, there's an opposing opposite belief that also exists. And every beliefs that are opposite of each other could actually threaten the identity of the opposite. That's what is really. Well, let's go ahead and break it down. I want to hear what he's got to say on this, because he's very right.
Not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am, which means we live in a perception of ourselves. So I'll break it down. If I think Rangan thinks I'm smart, I'll say I feel smart. But if I think Rangan thinks I'm not smart, then I'll say I'm not smart. And so the challenge is that we're basing how we feel about ourselves on what we think someone thinks of us. And the greatest challenge with that is, how do you have any idea if what you think someone thinks about you is even true, and whether that's even the best place to start? So that's where our identity struggles. We start pursuing things in life because we think other people value them. It's almost like, let's think of the most playground version of this. If I remember wearing high-tech shoes from BHS to the playground, right? I remember my mom.
I just want to expand a little on this. He's starting to talk about externals, things that are outside of us. And that's what we have the tendency to do now is chase externals. We become so results driven where it's like, I want that result. I want that result. I want that result. We want these results of all these other people. We want the sneakers. We want the house, the car, all of those things. However, we forget about the process, to be process driven, that there's a level of work involved, right? So let me give you an insight to this. It's like archery. If you're going to pull the bow, you might be looking at that target. You're looking at that target. I'm being results driven. I have to hit the target. But being process driven and being in the now, in the moment, you pull that bow and you're focused on your breath, your stance, how you're aiming, how you're doing everything, the quality of pulling the bow, the quality of archery, the actual archery skill development, the mastery, not the perfection of hitting the target, but the mastery in the moment of pulling that bow. Now, let's go ahead and I'm going to move over to what we call the value audit. We talk a lot about values on this show. And we're going to go ahead and talk about values. I talk about values all the time, but I'm going to expand what Jay is saying.
I used to do it every day, but probably about 3 times a week. And I'm not saying anyone has to do it that often. I do it that often because I feel I live a life that is constantly moving, constantly challenging, and I'm presented with a lot of options and opportunities that I never imagined I'd have. And so I have to really train my mind to focus on these value audits. But I also know that every year I spend 2 or 3 weeks, I go back to the monastery in India and I spend time in the ashram with monks. And so I feel this is both an activity that happens weekly or monthly. I'd say once a month. I'd say the best way is to treat it like your accounts and your taxes. Look at it every month, look at your bank statement every month. And then once a year, when you have to do your taxes and you're going through that tax return and getting it all right, you kind of do a deep dive on it. So I'd say if everyone...
Let's go over that. So he's talking about the value audit. And value audit, which I've talked about on this show, by the way, value audit is taking a good hard look at what you value and doing an audit on those things. And your values are going to change. Like what you valued when you were 25 is certainly not going to be the same as what you value at 50. Because your values will change because you are evolution across time. So he said specifically, look at how you spend your money and time. And what I'm going to add on to that, if your calendar and your bank statement doesn't match your values, you're not stepping into your truth. You're not living that truth. You're financing your fears, if you will. You're falling into those pitfalls. So it's important to look at our life as results driven. However, process driven or even heart centered can bring us to a place of contentment and happiness. And that's why people say, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get this result. I'll be happy when I achieve this job. I'll be happy when I make $1 billion. There's no sense of contentment or happiness because the chase is very external. It can be very external. So this is what I was referring to. To be process driven is to do the work in the now, but also develop some contentment. Now, this is not we have to make sure we don't get it twisted because people will fall into external results as it relates to internal contentment. And we have to separate the two. Like you could have your external goals that you want to have, but you do have to be content on the inside with who you are as a human being. Because human nature is in a constant state of flux. You're like the moon. You change. You shift. Your emotions shift. Everything about you should. This is why human beings cannot be perfect. It's impossible to be perfect as a human being because you're attributing perfectionistic external results to human nature, and we have to separate those. When people start understanding that, they get to separate the concept of an external result to your internal nature. In other words, they take their results of failure, whatever failure results they get, and they attach it to their self-esteem. And that's what happens. And then people are never happy. Why am I not happy? Because I have to be perfect. Not realizing that it's what you're doing. It's a task. It's developing something external. People are taking these external results and grafting it onto their identity. And they emotionally beat the crap out of themselves as a result. Right? I'll be happy when. You've heard those statements before. So having a strong core identity is cultivating deep self-awareness, and you have to constantly and consistently reflect on your values, because the values you had when you were 25 are not the same as when you're 50. Embracing that authenticity means no longer hiding parts of who you are. And you start to align every action with the things that you actually value. You're aligning your actions with who you are, especially when no one is watching. Because the number one thing that erodes and destroys confidence, completely erodes and destroys confidence, is to break the promises you make to yourself. The most important promises, Ed Milet says this, the most important promises are the ones you make to yourself. And if you break them all the time, it's like self-erasure. You start to erode your confidence. You erode who you are, right? What we need to understand is that human beings, they act from their own reality and they act from their own framework in which they see the world. And we got to come to the idea of self-concept versus self-esteem. Self-concept is what you think of yourself. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. That's important. It's so crucial to know this. The self-concept is what you think about yourself. It's what you hold about yourself, your traits, your roles, the things you do. Self-esteem is how you feel. It's that emotional evaluation, right? It's how much you like, accept, and value yourself, not other people. One is cognitive and the other one is very affective. Very important. So if you think about it this way, we change to our life. In early adulthood, a person might value ambition, status, achievement. I'm 30 years old. I have to be successful. Prioritizing careers, parental pressures, personal goals. Over time, especially after major life events, you get burnout, you get loss, you become a parent, your values actually shift. They shift towards your health, they shift towards your relationships, they shift towards inner peace, whatever the case may be. What once was essential now takes the back seat to whatever becomes meaningful. Life is evolution across time for whoever you are that is listening. Now let's move on to the last part. We're going to go all the way towards the end.
Yeah, so I'm going to share with everyone what's been the biggest thing. It's in the book, but I'll go into in depth now. It's the three biggest things that have changed my experience of COVID. And I've expressed this and shared this with so many companies that I've been doing private coaching with or my own clients. And these three things have really changed a lot of how they feel. And they're three really easy things you can do starting today or tomorrow. So you don't need a lot to make them happen. So they call the three S's: the sights, the sense, and the sound. So what we see, what we hear, and what we smell has a huge impact on how we feel. We actually underestimate our senses because we rely so much on our eyes. I'll give you an example.
All right. Now I want to bring this out. This is like saying yes, and So he talked about the three S's: the sights, the sense, and the sounds. You can design your environment, design your space with sights, sense, and sounds. Let's go a little further, though. What I want to share is most people wait for peace to actually show up in their lives. But peace, internal peace and contentment is something that's curated. What you see, what you smell, and what you hear is programming your nervous system. This is why when you are in a difficult environment, when people are in tough environments, they do have to get out of where they are. And that could be a Herculean task. It's like Hercules, be one of the biggest, toughest, worst tasks in the world to get out of where you are, environmentally speaking. But when we understand that peace, safety, contentment, these are things that are internally curated. Safety and feeling safe is a feeling. It is. And what we see, smell, and hear is programming our nervous system. So we have to start curating these things like your life actually depends on it, because you know what? It actually does. We're going to go ahead and listen to the rest of this and then finish off the show.
Wearing masks recently, right? Like everyone's been wearing a mask recently. How many of you struggle to understand what people are saying because you can't read their lips anymore? Right? We're so used to looking at people's lips as they talk that we know what words they're saying. Now that we can't see their lips, we realize we're actually not that great listeners. And our ears are almost asleep. So we rely so much on our eyes. So let me explain to you what you can change. Let's talk about sight, what you see. Ask yourself right now, what's the first thing you see in the morning? What's the first thing? 80% of people, they see their phone first thing in the morning and last thing in the night.
He's right.
After they see their partner and before they see them in the morning.
They don't even kiss their husband or wife. They're too busy looking at their phone.
You to see something in the morning that fills you with joy. It could be your favorite quote. It could be your favorite teaching. It could be a picture that your kids drew that you absolutely love. It could be a photo of your family. It could be a work of art that inspires you. I surround myself in my studio with pictures of places I've lived, people that I'm inspired by, stories that I've told, because it fills my mind with energy when I walk into this room. If I walked in and saw a blank white wall, of course I'm going to go, this is way more interesting. But my wall's more interesting than this to me because it's meaningful.
And that is another reason why people actually take their cell phones and put it into grayscale mode or black and white mode, because by doing so actually makes your phone less desirable, right? Makes your cell phone less desirable. You're dealing with the sight aspect of it, putting it in black and white. And that's not anything magical. That's been around.
The first thing you see in the morning, don't make it something reactive. Don't make it a message or an email. Make it something that you've chosen to inspire you. That's the first thing. The second thing is the sense in your life. Why is it that when you walk into a spa or you get a massage, you feel relaxed? It's because they have sandalwood, lavender, and eucalyptus just spraying out of diffusers and candles.
He's right.
It's an instant way of feeling calm. If you just
we completely ignore the power of our senses. We really do. We don't realize how they can be utilized as tools to actually motivate us and move us and change us.
Your inward breath for a count of 4 and exhale for a count of 4. You just inhale eucalyptus, lavender, sandalwood, whatever scent you like from a diffuser or a candle. You will feel a natural sense of calm in your life and feel that clarity that you need to drop out of that anxious feeling you may have. And you can have a different scent in your living room, a different scent in your bedroom, a different scent in your kitchen, one that feels right for the energy you have in that room. The third and final one is sound. So many of us don't realize the power of sound, but whether you're listening to your favorite song, or whether you listen to nature sound. When we were monks, we would rise to nature sound. And we found that the sound of nature is so at pace with the body and the mind. When I lived in New York, I'd often feel exhausted mentally. Why? I exercise, I meditate. Why is it that I feel that way? And I realized because it's of something when I researched called cognitive load. Your brain is making sense of insignificant sounds of drilling, of construction work, of cars and taxis and horns. And so your brain doesn't have the power to deal with what's actually it's trying to focus on. So ask yourself, what are the sounds in the background of your life? Are they songs that bring you to life? Are they music that calm you down before you go to bed? Use sights, scents, and sounds to change the state and energy of any environment in your home. And
the big point that I want to expand on here is that some of these sounds could actually be disruptive. They can actually disrupt your focus. They can be disruptive, right? That's the thing. When it comes to certain sounds, certain sights, they could also work in the negative. They can be disruptive to you. That's why there's value in what he's actually saying, because he's basically saying, utilize these things in a structured way that's going to actually feed your mind. It's about feeding what you see, feeding what you smell, feeding the sounds, because he knows that the internal state of who you are is something that needs to be cultivated. That's exactly. So that's pretty much it. I want to thank these two gentlemen. And hey, Jay, if you're listening, thank you. This, I'm sure, was shot in COVID a very long time ago. We're now in 2025. And I just want to say, like, subscribe, and share. And I'm thankful that the wisdom of these two gentlemen, they're able to bless the world with what they know. I myself, I'm a breathwork practitioner. I do breathwork all the time, meditate often. And of course, in terms of my spiritual life, I am working on understanding the Vedas every day. Have a great day. See you on the next video.